we are representing the 9 colonels, and we have with us this morning is Colonel Rayner, the honorary colonel of the regiment, myself, Lieutenant Colonel retired Alan Rance. And our aim this morning is to discuss with you public perceptions of the Bermuda Regiment that have come about as a result of 2 surveys that we've had conducted in the last 3 months that we think may be of some interest to you and to the public at large. There was a poll done early in the summer by the Royal Gazette that indicated that 51% of the population surveyed were in favor of conscription being abolished, and that 39% were opposed to that happening. Those results also indicated that younger people were in much greater favor of this happening than other age groups. 61% of people aged 18 to 34 were in favor of abolition of conscription, while only 33% supported it. That should have surprised no one. We were disappointed that further questions were not asked with respect to the support for the regiment, because we think that's key to understanding the implications of abolishing conscription. And so we had 2 further polls done, one in September and one in December. And those results we're presenting to you today. The first important point we'd like to make to you is that in the September poll, a total of 72% of the residents surveyed supported the regiment. In December, that figure had risen to 76%. You might expect that. Those who said they did not support the regiment dropped from 23% to 17% between September and December, while the undecided rose from 5 to 8%. We think that's a very significant increase in support for the regiment. We believe that increase is not just because of the good work the regiment did after the 2 hurricanes, but it was also those hurricanes were very sobering to Bermuda as a whole. And as a consequence, people had the opportunity to see clearly what the regiment means to Bermuda and how important it is as a unit, and particularly as an active, functioning unit continuing to do its role. The second point we'd like to make, and this is in particular with respect to the age group 18 to 34. In the September poll, 60% supported the regiment and 31% did not. In the December poll, 69% supported the regiment and only 21% did not. That's a big shift. It's the biggest shift across all of the age groups that were polled. Indeed, you'll see the minds seem to change less as you get older. Again, we believe this was a sobering effect from the hurricanes. It was an indication that young people also have a tendency to be affected by popular causes more than necessarily the facts, a habit we expect people to grow out of as they get older. The third important point is that we see that the poll found that around 50% of people supported the current manning of the regiment through conscription in September, and 38% opposed it, while 12% didn't know how to answer that question. In December, 55% of the residents polled supported the manning of the regiment using conscription. 35% opposed it, and 11% didn't know. These 2 sets of figures, we feel, demonstrate the understanding that people have of the Bermuda Regiment and its roles, as they saw displayed in the aid to the community after the 2 hurricanes, the smaller the objection to conscription. So we feel the greater the understanding. The hurricanes gave the regiment the opportunity to shine, and I think people understand, even in the younger age group, its importance, and therefore the the objection to conscription goes down. We'd like to make it very clear we do support an all-volunteer regiment. We know better than any how much better it could be if it was all volunteer. We also, though, have great concerns as to whether that is a realistic goal, whether that can actually be achieved. And unless it can be clearly demonstrated that this is possible year in and year out without equivocation, then we feel we must keep conscription on the books. It's a great risk to just abolish conscription. Unless it can be demonstrated, as I've said, that all volunteers, sufficient numbers of volunteers can be found each year, sufficient numbers can be retained in the regiment each year, then we should keep conscription on the books. We must not allow ourselves to get in a situation where the regiment declines in numbers, because then its ability to do its role will go down. And what will happen after a period of time is it will actually dwindle very, very rapidly. The strength could go down very quickly in a matter of a few years. And that's something that we think needs to be clearly understood. Finally, it's worth pointing out something that's probably very obvious. The regiment has for a very long time, to this very day, enjoyed very considerable support amongst our community. We would be surprised if there were many other groups with the same level of community support. Finally, I'd just like to add that we have sent copies of our polling results to His Excellency the Governor, to the Premier, and to the Leader of the Opposition. And we hope that they are assisted by these results. Thank you very much. I will take any questions you have.
Bottom line, you don't support Colonel Brown's view of volunteer organization?
No, we didn't say that. We fully support if you could have an all-volunteer organization. We fully support that. We know the benefits. But what we feel is that it's a great risk to just abolish conscription out of the Defense Act and not have it as a fallback position. The Defense Act reads in Section 3 that the manning of the regiment is to be raised by volunteers. Section 4 is the section that brings in raising by conscription if there are not sufficient volunteers. We feel there's no need to take that out. We think as a risk, it's much higher if you take that out. What are you going to do if you do not get sufficient volunteers? That's the big question. And our view is, unless you can prove unequivocally that you're going to have sufficient numbers of volunteers, then keep that in. By all means, have a policy. Volunteerism by policy. In other words, if you want to have various different incentives, be they a signing on bonus, be they a retention, you get so much extra money if you sign on for an extra couple of years, or if you sign on to begin with, you get a lump sum payment. By all means, others will join because they want to join, and money isn't the important factor. They are in it for other reasons, whether it's for service to the community or whatever other self-satisfaction they may get out of it. There will always be folks who want to do that, but that will, our point, based on the many years of experience, and if you look back over the span that we represent as a group, it goes back from the 1950s through the formation of the regiment in 65 right up to current day. And we have never seen sufficient numbers of volunteers to feel that it could be an all-volunteer organization.
I think I can add to that. Colonel Foster Brown also quotes that there's 35 to 40% of the serving members who are volunteers who are now volunteers. But the vast majority of that group are in fact serving beyond their 3-year commitment. All right? The main point is that most of those people were in fact conscripts. The question is, would we have had them if we didn't have conscription? And that is our point. Will we be able to maintain the numbers required if we do not have conscription? The other factor in terms of those numbers is that if the number of volunteers drops dramatically, we also still have the ongoing year-to-year problem of absenteeism. So if we're short at the start, and we have an absentee problem, as we've had it sometimes in the past, then the regiment becomes even more deficient in terms of being able to fulfill its roles.
Conscription was abolished over 20 years ago in England, and why not follow suit?
Go ahead.
I would suggest that the decision to abolish conscription is one based mainly on civil rights opinions. And my view is, in our 50 years experience, that opinion does not support the benefits that integration, the formation of the regiment, and the maintenance of the regiment that benefit has provided to Bermuda. But the amalgamation of the regiment occurred in '65. That was 7 years after conscription was started, and it was the first major experiment in integration in the island. There were no major hiccups, and we haven't looked back. So we've got a 50-year experience of good benefit because of the use of the regiment, the formation of the regiment, and how the regiment is manned. We've got a heck of a lot of people who would not know each other in this island, black and white and white and white and black, who would not know each other in this island if they had not got together in the regiment.
I might just add to that there's been a great deal said about human rights. It is very clear that conscription is not a violation of anyone's human rights. That ruling has come from the highest court available to us, the Privy Council. And we think that to continue to say that it's a violation of human rights is a totally erroneous premise to put out there to begin with. It's not. And again, if you look at larger countries, such as the United Kingdom, that did abolish conscription, you have to look at the larger picture. You're looking at a much larger country, a much larger population base to draw upon. And if you look at the ratio of the number of people that they have in their armed forces versus their population, it's a very, very tiny percentage. We are a small, isolated community in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We have approximately 500 births in round figures per year. You're talking about requiring, for maintenance of a strength of 400, approximately 100 to 120 personnel each year. Now, obviously, the more that you can get to stay in the regiment each year, then that number might come down to a little under 100 each year. But you're asking for 20% of your births, 25% of your births, to go into service, volunteering. That's an extremely high percentage anywhere in the world. And I would suggest to you that's not going to happen. Not only here, but anywhere. Nowhere that I know of do you have 20 to 25% of the births. And then, of course, if you take that 500 that I just mentioned, of that, if you split it in half, you're talking 250 male and 250 female. And so if you then say, well, the regiment, you have the Defense Act as it reads right now is for the conscription of men. So if you look at the 250, that's in the eligible pool. You are talking about roughly having all 50% of all male births volunteering. I think when you look at that statistic, it's extremely unlikely that you're going to get 50% of your male births volunteering to go into anything, much less the Bermuda Regiment, which is going to be demanding service of you.
As I understand it, I thought the politicians were leaning towards abolition. If that be the case, aren't you sort of spitting in the wind?
Well, we recognize that both political parties have publicly advocated that they wish to abolish conscription. We also feel, though, that members of the political parties may not fully understand the implications of doing that. And that's why we've undertaken to try to educate not only the public, but our political leaders with respect to the implications of this. If they are making a decision that they think is abolishing conscription because it's a violation of human rights, and they're making a they're basing a national policy on an erroneous premise, and I would suggest that that's not a wise thing to do. And
I'd like to add to that. I'm going to throw a wrench here. The fact that politicians' opinions carry on vote and whatnot does not necessarily result in the best benefit long term. So we get consequences which occur, and suddenly you find the politicians are changing their minds and going back and rescinding something or changing something. And I think probably the biggest example I can give you right now is the ongoing debate in the UK about their inclusion in the EU. It's been going back and forth, tossed back and forth like a football from the start, and it's still ongoing. So, no, we are knowing our regiment, knowing the experience of we've had with our people, seeing the problems that we have with our people being, some of our people focusing down in basic things like elementary school. We don't feel that we are going to be able to, or we have serious doubts, that we will be able to maintain the required numbers in order to maintain the regiment. And that is our case.
Do you feel that the Regiment Roadshow has had any success?
sorry?
The Regiment Roadshow, do you feel that it's had any success?
I really don't know, to be honest with you. It may have.
I can suggest that it has. The commanding officer indicated the other day at a meeting that they were somewhere like 70 people that were being considered as volunteers. They may have said it, whether they've actually signed on, I don't know. There wasn't a conclusive statement, but that was the number that was tossed about at that time.
I have one last question. Larry Marshall suggested that the regiment over the last few years is made up of 90%, 95% blacks and a very small percentage of others, Portuguese or white. There are loopholes for those that have finances to get out of the regiment through education, i.e. Your take.
Yeah, 95% is erroneous, and I don't think anybody would believe that. Secondly, since conscription started in the late 50s, there have been efforts to plug the loopholes for people who were, wanting to escape. People going off to school and not coming back and so forth. The age limit for joining was raised from, I think they started at 18 to 21 conscripting, and they went up to 26. The 26 figure was to fit service up to age 30. Right, so after 26, a person was perhaps free of conscription. A lot of people stayed away until they were 26. Those people who have been conscripted, the vast majority of them, and if you want to think 95%, I'd say more than 95%, have in fact put the shoulder to the wheel and performed. and feel that there's a great benefit as a result, benefit to the island. And this has been, I think, disregarded by Mr. Marshall, disregarded or he just doesn't know.